Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my live. Thank you to those of you who attend every single time. I am super appreciative of you. And for those of you who are brand new to this master class, thank you for joining. My name is Kathy Belletti. I'm the founder of Motivate with K.A.T, and that is an admissions training company for advisors and the leadership staff. I have been in higher education, specifically admissions, for roughly 16 years. I started off as an advisor, then a director, a regional VP, and now I dedicate my life to serving the admissions crew and the leadership staff. Look, if you're an advisor out there, your job is not easy. If you're a leader, it's even worse, right? But all in all, it's definitely worth it. If you are listening on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe. There are tons of fun stuff on there, especially if you follow my podcast, Ed Up Career Schools, The Scoop. Hello to those of you on Facebook, and good morning, my LinkedIn crew. So today we're talking about the don'ts and do's of leadership, and this topic is so critical. I mean, if you guys follow any social media channel, you see that you've been seeing all different types of posts and articles about leadership and toxicity in the workplace. It is a very critical topic. And what's happening is too many folks are getting the leadership title misconstrued with managers, bosses, right? Totally different. Totally different. They're not the same. Okay. When it comes to leadership, it's not about throwing out orders and bossing people around all day and telling people what to do, right? When you are a leader, think of it this way: when a group of people are following you, that means you have to be doing something for them to mimic and emulate you, right? So if you're going to be a leader, you have to lead by example. You have to be doing something in order for this group of people to have someone to follow. There needs to be a task that they're able to look at you and say, oh, okay, that's how you do it. This is what I'm supposed to do. So, in order for you to lead, there has to be movement. All right. That is the biggest difference. And think of it this way: two different scenarios. Would you prefer to have a group of people on your team who come in and they show up every single day because they absolutely have to? Right? They need to. They need this opportunity because they have families that they need to provide for. They need a job. They need a paycheck. They have to make sure that they are the provider. So what happens is, in a case like that, these people, they're going to show up regardless until they find a better opportunity. Right? Or would you prefer to have a group of people who come in every day because they need the work, right? Because everyone needs to work. However, they want to be there. They trust you. They believe in you because they know that you always have their best interest at hand. In that second scenario, guess what happens? Your crew comes in every day and they go over and beyond because they understand that your success is also their success. There's a difference between those two teams. So you have to think to yourself, do you want to be the type of manager who says, you know what, I need you to perform because that's what you're paid to do? Or do you want to be the type of leader who's able to inspire and encourage and create other leaders on your team? Okay, so today we're going to get into the don'ts and do's of leadership. Because one thing, look, being a leader, it's not the easiest task, right? In some cases, it could be a nightmare. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it is one of the most gratifying and fulfilling roles that you can have, where you are put in a position where you can inspire people and train them to get out there and build their own teams and inspire other people and start that cycle all over again. Okay, that's what's so amazing about leadership. So let's get into it. All right. So, number one, when it comes to the don'ts, okay, do not ever ask your team to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. Here's what was happening. So I've been in this industry for a very long time, and I started off in a really big corporate company where there were over 40 plus campuses. And every team had expectations, and I'm talking about admissions. Every team had expectations, and in a lot of cases, some of those expectations were not attainable. But what happens coming from the top, it's you got to make it happen. You got to make it happen. And a lot of members on the team, they sat back and they were thinking to themselves, well, how can I make this happen? How is this even possible? Right. And in some cases, you will look at the situation and say, well, if this is something that they're asking us to do, despite not having the resources or the training to make it happen, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it happen. And when you think about it, the enrollments were there, but how many of those students started class? How many of those students actually graduated? And this was the problem in a lot of cases, because you lose respect when you're throwing out expectations that may not be attainable, and you're telling your team, make sure you get it done. I don't care how you get it done. But then they don't have the training and the support, but you've never sat in that seat before to see how that's even going to be possible. When you think about movies like, shows like Undercover Boss, those are put in for a reason, right? They create those shows for a reason. There's a reason why the CEO, the owner of a franchise, will come down to the level of the employee in order to grow, because they need to know what's happening at the ground level. They need to know how their customers feel. They need to know how their employees feel. And that's how companies are able to expand. That's how they're able to grow. That's how they're able to come up with more innovative ideas in order to be successful. So it's the same thing. If you are a leader and you are throwing out all of these orders to your team, but you have no idea what it's like to sit on the phone and make 250 dials, you have no idea what it's like to sit on the phone with one potential student and hear one obstacles, one circumstance after the other, just to hear no thank you, and then have to pick up that phone 50 more times and have the same type of conversation. It's time for you to either sit in that seat or get your team some type of coaching that's going to guide them to success. All right. So never ask your team to do something that you're not willing to do yourselves. Get with your teams, find out how they feel on the ground floor, find out what some of the challenges are. And that's how you're going to be able to grow and get your company to the next level. Okay. So the second thing, do not hold on to resentment. Look, when it comes to leadership, yes, you're people, right? You're people with feelings. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to show your team some type of grace. If it comes to the point where someone makes a mistake, you train them up so that they don't make that mistake again, and then you let them go. Okay? You let them fly. Because here's what happens. If in fact you have team members who mess up, and they're continuously punished over and over, guess what? The rest of the team is going to be watching that, and they're going to be saying to themselves, hey, the management team here is not forgiving at all. I'm not sure if this is something that I want to be a part of. And here's what happens if, in fact, you develop that resentment towards someone. Every little thing that they do after that becomes something bigger than it needs to be. And guess what? Those little things, everyone else on the team has been doing the same thing all along, but it wasn't a big deal. But because you have resentment towards that person, every little thing that they do is a big deal. You have to be very careful with that. But then also, what's important is to go back and say, you know what? Why did this person make a mistake? Was it directives that I actually gave them in the first place and I forgot? So now all they're doing is following my lead. And because I didn't remember, now I'm holding them accountable. You have to be careful. This is why every single time you change a policy, you update a rule, make sure that you have that in writing so that everyone is always consistently on the same page. So show your team some grace, because what's going to happen is if your team members start to feel like if I make a mistake, I'm never going to be forgiven, guess what? That actually leads to bigger mistakes, because now everyone is walking on eggshells. So be careful with that. Number 3, do not determine your team's success solely based on productivity. You may have someone on your team right now who they may have average productivity every single session, right? But they come in with a positive mindset every single day. They're always the ones that have all of the ideas that they bring to the table, where they're telling you, oh my gosh, you know what? This is what we can do to increase enrollments the next start. This is what we can do to make the company better. This is the person who is on your team and they bring so much positive energy and excitement. But guess what? They may not be your top performer. But here's what happens when the success of your team is based solely on productivity. That same person that's overly excited every single day and they come in and they want to win and go over and beyond, if they have a bad start, if they have a bad day, in their mind, they're thinking, I'm a failure. Because one little thing, which was their expectation, and look, let's get real. When it comes to admissions, it is a sales role, right? In a lot of different companies, there are metrics you have to produce. But if in fact one person just falls behind, but yet still they have so much potential, they have so many other amazing traits. If everything is just solely based on productivity, you can send that person backwards and you can lose out on one of the most amazing people that you have on your team. In any role, it's not just about productivity. Because honestly, in this industry, this is why there are so many advisors out there up until today who are still throwing enrollments at the wall and just praying that they're going to stick, right? Because in their mind, they're saying, you know what, if I don't perform, I may be having a different type of conversation. So never base someone's success on pure productivity. In admissions, my admissions leaders out there, if you are watching, never measure any member of your team's success just based on an enrollment number. Because if you do that, guess what? You're going to get tons of enrollments. But now you have to think of, are those going to be starts and grads? No, because they're only worrying about the number. They're only worrying about the expectation. And this is how it's been for years. And at some point, it has to stop. Okay, so do not forget, do not ask your team to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. Okay, do not hold resentment against anyone that's on your team. If they mess up, train them, let it go. And number 3, which is so important, do not determine anyone's success just based on a number, just based on productivity. People are allowed to have bad days, okay? Folks are allowed to have bad starts, but it is your job to get in there and find out, okay, what happened? Because the last 5 or 6 starts, you were doing amazing. What shifted? When you have those type of conversations, it says to your team members, this person actually cares and I am not as good as my last enrollment. I know a lot of you folks out there have heard that term before, right? Guess what? Some schools, unfortunately, still live by that standard. Okay, so let's get into some of the do's. Do continue to coach and train your team. This is super important. And what's really surprising is there's so many schools out there who still refuse to invest in training for their teams. So what happens? They hire tenured advisors, assuming that tenure equals productivity or expertise. And in a lot of cases, that's not true. So taking it back to 10 plus years ago, remember, anytime you had to get on a training call, it wasn't looked as something that was an opportunity. It was looked at by a lot of advisors, punishment. So if you're sitting there on that training call, a lot of times, your colleagues will walk past and they're like, ooh, what did you do? That means that you sucked last week. You have to get on the call today at 4. So no one really embraced the training. But guess what? The folks that ended up on the training were the ones who were actually learning about how to effectively communicate with students. So you may have tenured advisors who were heavy hitters for 10, 15, 17 years. And guess what? They never were taught the basic concepts of how to have a conversation with a potential student, ask the right questions, identify their need in order to pair it with what your school has to offer. And I'm not saying that's all tenured advisors because I've been in the game for a long time. But there are so many advisors who are still floating around who still do not have to who still don't know how to have a simple conversation with our potential students. Is double barreling of questions, overpowering them, giving all the information on the phone, talking over them, not asking any questions about the student's circumstance or background, selling the heck out of the school and the programs. And by the time you get to the enrollment, that advisor can't even tell you why this person needs to take the program. And guess what? Because a lot of those tenured advisors were never trained in the first place because it was a punishment to a lot of folks back in the day. Invest in training for your team. You would be surprised if you just take a second. And look, I know you leaders have a lot on your plate. I know you have meetings. I know you're driving activity during the day, executive team. I know you got Zoom calls up the wazoo every single day. However, if you don't have the time, make sure that you put a senior in place to observe some of these calls and the interviews. You would be surprised. You would be shocked on what you hear in some of these interviews and in some of these first calls with potential students that you're paying thousands of dollars to attract every single day. Invest in training. Remember, the industry has changed, right? The generation changes. So that means that your teams need to stay up to par with what's going on. What do our students actually want? Right now, it's all about Gen Z, right? So this generation is privy to a lot of information. So you have so many more students that are doing research before they even fill out a lead form on your website. So they're up on the game. Things have changed, right? So it's time to get real with these students. It's time to take a step back and say, hold on for a second. Maybe the right fit for you may not be my school. Because guess what? If you say that to someone, you're still helping them. Instead of putting every single person into a box because you have to meet an enrollment expectation, and then you're wondering what's happening with retention. Okay, invest in a trainer or coach. For those of you who are not able to stay, remember to go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe because this masterclass will be loaded on my YouTube channel. And if you have to go, you can meet me at 5 p.m. this evening on Twitter Spaces. We're going to be talking about how to get appointments to show. Okay, so number 2 in the do's. All right. Do make sure that you arrange huddles and one-on-one meetings with your staff. Now, a huddle, that is a 10 to 15-minute meeting that takes place every single morning once everyone arrives at work. I know some of you may say, I don't have time for that, but guess what? Especially if you're working remote, a lot of your team members, they are lonely and they're sitting in their own box and they're stressed all day. And when you don't connect with your team, guess what? Here's where quiet quitting comes in. Okay, because now all of a sudden you have one of the most excited members on your team who has gone rogue. So the person who used to come up with all the innovative ideas, guess what? They're silent now. The person who is consistently performing and now the last 3 weeks they've been drowning, guess what? They don't even care because you don't. Make sure that you have that huddle. It's a time to really talk about expectations from the day before, what's expected of the team today, get the blood running, get them excited, okay? And kudos to someone. Look, if you can't find somebody on your team to give kudos to, just give kudos to the entire team for showing up every day. Because if you can't find something that they're doing right, you should just celebrate the fact that they still show up, okay? But make sure that you're having that 10 to 15-minute huddle every single morning. It is very important, okay? So that you can bring the team together. And guess what? A lot of your team members, they rather hear from their peers than from you a lot of times. So it's an opportunity for you to share best practices. It's an opportunity for you to have somebody on the team talk about maybe a challenge that they had the day prior, and someone else on the team may have something to offer them. Okay. The one-on-ones, those are so important. Make sure that you at least put aside 15 minutes to meet with each member of your team every single week. And those one-on-ones, they don't necessarily have to be about performance and productivity. Those one-on-ones is an opportunity for you to gauge how your employees are feeling. Do you still enjoy working here? You'd be surprised what some of your team members may actually say. Talk about their goals. Some of your members may want to go on to another level. They may want to go on to be a director. Now you can begin to mold them. And this can work in your benefit because you can easily coach them and say, well, you know what, if you're going to lead a team, you have to learn the role. Everything can always work in the benefit of you and that team member. You may find out that that person doesn't even want to be a part of your department, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay, I've met with people before who are like, you know what, admissions is not for me. I actually want to be in the academics department, or I want to learn financial aid. In this industry, a lot of people are cross-trained, right? But you're never going to know that if you don't have that time to spend with that person so that you're able to let them know that you are there as a support. You can talk about their strengths because you always want to reward strengths, right? But that's an opportunity for you to talk about some of their opportunities. How can I help you succeed? What do you want to learn? Sometimes we get into this cycle where we're assuming that our team members are okay and that they know everything. When a lot of times, some of your team members are sitting in their offices drowning because they're not going to come to you and say, I need help. It is your job to make sure that you stay ahead of every single team member. Okay, that's a part of your crew. So make sure that you are setting that 10-15 minute time slot for every single member of your team. And then it gives you an opportunity to prep them for the next week. Okay. Number 3, when it comes to dues, be transparent. Transparency is so important when it comes to a team because everyone knows that it's not always rainbows and unicorns. All right. So make sure that you share all of the amazing things that's happening, but most importantly, tell them what's not happening. Share the bad stuff, no matter how bad it is, because here's the thing. The people on your team are not slow. Okay. All right. They're not absent-minded. Everyone knows that in every situation, nothing is 100%. So if you are the type of leader who only likes to share the great stuff that's happening, all of the amazing stuff, that right there is a red flag for your team because they're going to start saying to themselves, something is up here. They're hiding something. Because anywhere you go, nothing is 100%. Everywhere you go, there's going to be fallbacks, there's going to be challenges. So why not share that with your team? You would be surprised. There may be a member on your team who has the answer to that obstacle. But here's what happens. Sometimes, unfortunately, in leadership, there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of egos. As a leader, you should never be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room, right? So use your team, share with them everything that's going on. Something great, amazing, have everyone celebrate that. But if something is going downhill, make sure that you share that too. Okay? Because the team is made up of a group of members who are supposed to support each other, including the leader. So make sure that you are transparent. Okay? So I hope you guys really follow these steps. It is going to be a game changer for you. Anyone who's looking into go into leadership, look, it's an amazing road, but you also have to be ready. Okay? Because sometimes when you're in leadership, you have to be prepared to now be the outsider. Okay? You have to be prepared to now be criticized about everything. But this is why leadership is not for everyone. You have to be strong. You're dealing with all different types of personalities, right? You may have people on your team who don't like you and never would. But once you are able to still get the job done, once you are able to inspire and lead a group of people, it really doesn't matter. You just need to make sure that every member on your team understands that you are there for them. You are there to serve. You are there to inspire, to build them, and promote other leaders. And the only way that that's going to happen is if you continuously communicate with them and simply care. All right. So I really hope that you guys took so much away from this masterclass today. A couple of items. Now, number one, if you do not follow me on YouTube, what are you guys doing? Okay. Make sure that you head over to my YouTube channel and like and subscribe. If you follow my podcast, Ed Up Career Schools, The Scoop, all of the episodes are loaded onto my YouTube channel if you enjoy video. Okay, for my admissions people, there are tons of 1 minute videos on my YouTube channel with a bunch of tips when it comes to the first call, the first interview, dealing with programs that you don't offer, students calling in for those type of programs. You can easily click on the video and go, oh my gosh, I can get on the phone and use that immediately. All right, so make sure that you head over to my YouTube channel and subscribe. That way you get notified anytime a new video or a podcast episode is loaded. For my executive team, if you are looking for an admissions training platform that can complement and support what your director of admissions are already doing, I have a full training course that gives every member on your team 1 year unlimited access to that platform. It is called Next Level Admissions Training. Okay, this starts from the very beginning as far as effective communication, the follow-up process, stitch activity, managing class start expectations, anything that you can possibly think of that you need your team to know when it comes to the role of an advisor. Whether you're brand new or whether you are tenured, 15, 20 years, it really doesn't matter. If you are interested in seeing what that platform looks like, head on over to lessons.motivatewithkat.com so that we can set up a demo. And I also have a leadership course for my director of admissions entitled EDU Reverse Framework. So if you want to be a better leader or you just need to brush up on some skills, head on over to the same link and you will see that course listed as well. All right, tonight I am going to be on Twitter Spaces. Remember, I am there every other Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and we're talking all things higher education, what you love and what you despise. Okay, so make sure that you meet me there this evening at 5 p.m. And lastly, every other week, I am on Instagram live at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. That's every other Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern at on Instagram. All right, so you can tune in to some quick 15-minute trainings there where it comes to, we talk about everything. Oh my gosh. Stitch activity questions that you can ask students, how to ask for referrals, all different topics that I know you guys are going to love. All right, so do not forget to tune into those lives and don't forget to follow me on YouTube. LinkedIn crew, thank you for joining today. Thank you for those who were listening on Facebook, and thank you to those who are watching on YouTube. Until then, thank you for joining.